Hello class, this is lesson 1-14, adding and subtracting integers with and without the number line. This is a learning needed channel. My request to student in all videos is to remember your reason to pass the GED test and use that to motivate you to get that GED certificate. Second is don't give up. You got this. Just keep studying and you'll get that certificate. Finally, please like and subscribe to this video and my channel so that I can continue making more GED content, not just in math, but in all 4 subjects, and also to help with the outreach so that other students that may be studying for their GED exam can find these videos, and hopefully this helps them as well. If you are interested in one-on-one tutoring where I work with you live to go over some problems, go over a specific subject you're having difficulties on, or coming up with a study plan or anything to help you get that GED certificate, I do have that service available in my website, which is in the video description below. The study material that I suggest to students is the Kaplan GED Test Prep Book. It looks like that purple book right there. They do release a new version every year, and they don't really change a lot between each year. They keep most of the material the same. They do make a few updates. So don't feel obligated to get the latest copy. If you do find a previous year at a cheaper price, that should work as well. I also suggest to students to get their hands on a TI-30XS calculator. It is the only calculator that is allowed to be used in the GED math test, and go ahead and play with it a little bit and learn the functions. Just try it out now that you're studying, such that when you're in the exam, you're not struggling to find out how to do a specific math operation. If you are interested in getting the latest copy of the Kaplan GED Test Prep Book and the calculator, I do have links to purchase both of those in my video description below. All right, let's get started. Let's start with adding integers with the number line. Here I have given you a number line where I explicitly tell you how to interpret each notch in the number line. So each notch in the number line represents one value away from each other, and we are going to use that to solve this problem. 2 plus -5. To solve these problems with the number line, you are going to follow 2 steps. The first is to plot the first number on the number line. And the first number here just simply means the first number that is provided in this problem. So if I read 2 plus -5, the first number is 2, and I'm going to plot that on the number line. That is provided here. Next, from that first point, I move left or right the amount of spaces of the second number. Now, how do I know whether to move left or right? If the second number is a positive number, then you move right from that first point. If the second number is a negative number, then you move left from that first point. In this case, -5 is a negative number, so I move left. I move left the amount of spaces that that number is telling me. So I move left 5 spaces from the first point that I plotted, which in this case is 2. So from the 2, I move left 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spaces to the left because it's negative, and that lands me at -3. So the answer to 2 plus -5 is -3, and we solve that using the number line. Now, as you can imagine, you won't always have a number line, and sometimes it is not practical to use a number line to add integers. To solve problems without the number line, you are going to follow these 2 rules. The first is, if the numbers have the same sign, in other words, if they're both positive or they're both negative, then you are going to simply add the value of those numbers and keep the sign that both of the numbers have. Now, if the numbers have different signs, in other words, the first number is positive and the second number is negative, or the first number is negative and the second number is positive, then you are going to find the difference of the numbers, the value of the numbers. In other words, you're going to subtract those 2 numbers, and you keep the sign of the larger number. Now, that was a lot of words, so let's go over 2 examples to drill this in. Let's say that we are asked to add the following numbers. Here are 2 problems, 3 plus 4 and 5 plus -7. And I'll tell you right off the bat, you can do the first one by hand, right? You can count on your hands, 3 plus 4, or just in your head. But what you are doing is you are following these 2 rules without actually knowing it. So let's see what that looks like when the numbers, so that you can use this when the numbers aren't so easy. 3 and 4 have the same sign. They are both positive numbers. So I follow the first rule. I add the numbers together and I keep the sign. By the way, that addition sign does not represent positive sign in any way. Both the 3 and the 4 do not have a sign explicitly written next to them. Therefore, it can be safely assumed that they are positive numbers. So what I'm doing here is simply adding those two values, 3 plus 4, and that gives us 7, and I keep the sign of both of the numbers where they are both positive, so it is simply a positive 7. For the second problem, 5 and 7 have different signs. 5 is a positive value, and 7 is a negative value. So you're going to follow the second rule. You are going to subtract the numbers from each other and keep the sign of the larger number. So let's start with subtracting the numbers. I am going to subtract 5 from 7, so it's 7 minus 5, and that gives me a value of 2. But that 2 doesn't mean that I'm done with the problem. That's simply the first of the two things that I must do, which is subtract. The next thing is to assign it the sign of the larger number. The larger number here between 5 and 7 is 7, and the sign associated with this larger number of 7 is negative. Therefore, now that I have subtracted the two numbers, and that gives me 2, I just simply assign that negative sign to the answer, and the answer becomes negative 2. Now we are going to round this out by going over subtracting integers, both with and without the number line. To subtract integers with the number line, you use a number line shown here, and we are solving the problem 2 minus negative 3. Subtracting integers really is adding integers with one step before it, and that is to convert the subtraction problem into an addition problem. So what this really means is that the subtraction of integers doesn't have a different rule set than adding integers. What you're going to do is you're going to convert that subtraction problem into an addition problem and then solve it like we did previously, because now it's an addition problem. So let me show you what that looks like. To convert a subtraction problem into an addition problem, the first thing you're going to do is to change the subtraction sign into an addition sign. And be very careful about this. If you notice here, I see two negative signs or two subtraction signs, those two dashes, right? You should be able to identify that the subtraction sign is the one between the 2 and the left parentheses, and not the one between the left parentheses and the 3, or in other words, the one next to the 3. The negative sign next to the 3 is what's telling us that that number is negative. The subtraction sign to the right of the 2, that's what's telling us that the number is, those two numbers are being subtracted. So be careful on correctly identifying which sign you need to change. So in this case, the sign that we need to change is the one immediately to the right of the 2. So that subtraction becomes addition. Next, we have to change the sign of the second number into its opposite sign. The second number here is negative 3. The sign of that is negative, so to change it to its opposite sign, I am going to turn that negative 3 into a positive 3. So when I convert those two signs into its opposite, I get a new problem. I get 2 plus 3. In other words, 2 minus negative 3 is the same thing as solving 2 plus 3. And now that we know how to solve addition problems with a number line, we're just going to solve it in the same way as we did before. And the first thing we're going to do is to plot the first number on the number line. But now we're doing it off of this new problem of 2 plus 3. The first number given to us is 2, so I plot that on the number line, and that is here. And the next thing we're going to do is from that first point, we're going to move left or right the correct number of spaces. And here we see that we need to move towards the right because the second number is positive, and we need to move to the right 3 spaces because the number is 3. So following that, from the 2, I move to the right 1, 2, 3, and that lands us at positive 5. So the answer to 2 plus 3 is 5. And that is subtracting integers. As a summary, you're just going to turn it into an addition problem by doing these two conversions and then solve it as an addition problem. Just like adding integers, you need to be able to subtract integers without the number line. And just like using the number line, you are going to do the same thing. You are going to convert the subtraction problem into an addition problem and solve as an addition problem without the number line. So let's look at solving 5 minus negative 4. Let's go over those two steps to convert the subtraction problem into an addition problem, where the first is to convert the subtraction sign into an addition sign. The subtraction sign is the first sign immediately to the right of the 5, not the one to the left of the 4. So that becomes 5 plus -4. Then the second thing that you do is you change the sign of the second number into the opposite sign. The second number is negative, so I am going to turn that second number into a positive while keeping the addition sign. So the problem becomes 5 plus 4. In other words, 5 minus -4, whatever that answer is the same as solving 5 plus 4. And I know you guys can do this with your hands or in your head or with the calculator, but let's go through the steps so that you know how to do it with bigger and more difficult numbers. When you are solving addition without the number line, you are following these two rules, which you've already gone over. And we'll notice that 5 and 4 have the same sign. They are both positive. So you're going to follow the first rule, where you add the numbers and keep that sign. So all it is you are going to add 5 plus 4, and you get a value of 9, and you assign that 9 a positive value. So in this case, 5 plus 4 is 9. I'm not writing the positive sign in front of it, so therefore I know that it's a positive number. So the answer here is 9. And that's all it is again. All you're doing is converting the subtraction problem into an addition problem and solving it. So all addition and subtraction of signed numbers or integers are really just addition problems, except that when you're subtracting them, you first turn it into an addition problem. So that makes it a lot more uniform, a lot cleaner to do, because the only other step you need to remember is those two to convert a subtraction problem into an addition problem. Now let's do some practice problems. Let us solve -24 minus -14 with the number line. And here I am telling you how to interpret each space on the number line. If you'll notice, it is not 1, 2, 3, it is 5, 10, and 15. So you may need to plot the points in between those values with the correct relative distance from each other. But this is a subtraction problem. And as we mentioned, the first thing you need to do is convert subtraction problems into addition problems. So the first thing I'm going to do is convert the subtraction sign into an addition sign. So -24 minus -14 becomes -24 plus -14. Don't forget the second step, which is to flip the sign or get the opposite sign for the second number. The second number is -14, so that must become +14. And when I convert that, the problem becomes -24 plus 14. So now I am going to solve this new problem as an addition problem. Because again, -24 minus -14, as we have seen with this conversion, is the same thing as solving -24 plus 14. So the first thing I need to do is to plot the first number given to me in this problem, which is -24. Following the number line, that point should be here between -25 and -20, really close to -25, or what I interpret to be one space away from -25. So that is right there. The next thing that I do is from that first point, I move right or left in the amount of spaces given by the second number. The second number is a positive number. It's +14. Remember, you're referencing this new problem, -24 plus 14. Ignore the previous problem. You are done with -24 minus -14. You converted that into this new problem. So make sure that you're not moving in the incorrect direction because you're still referencing the original problem. Reference the new one. And this new one has a +14. That means that I move to the right because it's positive, and I move 14 spaces to the right from that first point. So one way that I did it is just in a uniform in 3 steps. I move 5 spaces to the right because the second number is positive. So I move 5 spaces, that's a little bit to the right of -20. Another 5 spaces, that's one value to the right of -15. And then 4 spaces. And that lands me at -10. You don't have to do it in these 3 steps. If you just count 14 spaces, you already know. As long as you get to -10, however that works for you is totally fine. But the answer here to the problem is that the answer is -10. And finally, let's practice one without the number line. Let's solve -72 minus 14. It is a subtraction problem, so the first thing I'm going to do is convert it into an addition problem. And I just want to provide a quick note before we do that, and that is that the minus sign or the negative sign between 72 and 14 is a subtraction sign, not a negative sign. 14 is a positive number. It is very easy to be confused and say, well, wait, it's -14. But you must know that a negative sign or subtraction sign, it cannot be used as both at the same time. It is either a subtraction sign or a negative sign. And we know it's a subtraction sign because the numbers are being subtracted and there is no parentheses in this case to tell us that the number is negative. So make sure that you are able to distinguish the two, and the more problems you do, the more you'll understand, or the more easily you'll see whether it's a subtraction sign or negative sign. So practice these a lot. Now that we've cleared that up, the first thing we're going to do is to convert the subtraction sign into an addition sign. And again, this now makes it look like 14 is positive, but no, we're not at the changing of the sign of 14. 14 as of right now is still positive. It's always positive as of right now. But then the second step is to convert that second number into its opposite sign. As I've been saying, 14 is a positive number, but now we need to change the sign of that, and now it becomes a negative number. And now see how this negative number is written in parentheses? That is how you'll likely see it the most often, with less confusion between whether it's a subtraction sign or a negative sign. Now that we've converted this problem, the new problem is negative 72 plus negative 14. And then we follow the two rules that we have with adding sign numbers. And we see here that both negative 72 and negative 14 have the same sign. They are both negative. So we follow the first rule. We are going to add the values of the numbers and keep the sign. We're going to keep the negative sign. So let's start with adding the numbers. 72 plus 14 is 86. That's the numerical value of the answer. But we don't know if it's, we're not done yet because we need to give it the correct sign. Is it positive or negative? And by the rule, since both numbers were negative, we keep that sign and we give it to the answer. So the answer becomes negative 86. So when you add them, you get that value, but then the second step is to give it the correct sign. Give it the same sign that both of those numbers had. So the answer is negative 86. That was today's video on adding and subtracting integers with and without the number lines. We went over a lot of material, so I highly recommend you guys to rewatch the parts that you think you might need to get clarification on a bit more. Leave me a comment if there's anything that I can do to help explain it better. But the best tip that I can give you is to practice several of these problems. And the steps that you do will stop taking up time. You'll start doing the steps without realizing it because you already know what to look for and what to do in each scenario. So just get some practice problems in with these, and you'll notice that it's actually not that difficult once you get into that habit of knowing what to do. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.